Excellent. Yeah, buddy. Thanks everyone for joining us here in today with we of course we have our standard and guest here with Ron Galloway, who is our all things macroeconomics and investing guru when it comes into anything that is stock related, options related, overall macroeconomic trends, what's going on in the world, what's going on with resources that we have here locally. Our intentions always is not to be that we, anybody in here like knows everything that there is to know, right? We're really looking for in an ideal world, what we're striving for is to have a community facilitated discussion that has the bottom up wisdom that we all have here as a group, and that the roles that we serve in leading this group is to be able to provide the create the space and also able to provide the infrastructure and architecture of the conversation, and then facilitate the sharing of that knowledge as it come in here too. So if you find yourself in this place being like, hey, I got questions about this, or I don't agree with that statement or that analysis, that's awesome. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? We're looking to have a free-flowing exchange of ideas of what is the collective wisdom of this group, and as we move through it. So Ron today has a lot. He's done a lot of research to pile in a lot of great information for us today. It's going to be a little bit different format than usual. So if you have a lot of distractions going on with like your email or your phone, I would highly recommend that you shut those down, because today is going to be a lot of data points that we're going to be looking at to be able to say, how do you see trends developing? And the only way you can see trends developing is to look at individual data points that might be important, and then have to think about how are those data points related. So this is going to be a deep thinking process that everybody will have today to get any value out of the group today. You're going to need to pay a lot of attention into what's happening there. Also, it's going to be important for you personally to do that. It's also going to be important for us as a group, because unless you're paying attention to be able to put your brain to the data points, you're not going to be able to come up with different ideas or theories or thinking that's going to expand the thinking of our group, of our collective wisdom in here today. So it's important for you, but it's also important for us to be able to have full attention into the discussion today. As things come up for you, let's get the conversation going in the chat. Ron's going to be presenting. I'm going to be in there moderating the chat to be just helping some of the discussion there too, as we have points and helping to flag out what remaining issues that we have. I think we have a hard stop in about 54 minutes from now. So Ron, go ahead and take us away. And I'm going to go ahead and shut down my camera and go on mute. If everybody can also just please mute and hold any questions to the end, or pop them in the chat as they come up for you. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, everyone. How y'all doing? As Scott said, today, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to throw a bunch of information at you, and I'm going to preface this by saying that one of the ways that I started learning when I started doing research about 25 years ago is I got from this book by Umberto Eco, who wrote The Name of the Rose. And he wrote this other book called Foucault's Pendulum. And in that book, what they would do is they would take two seemingly unassociated points and try and draw an inference between those two. It was one of the modes of thinking that was introduced in that book. And I've used it ever since. And in fact, I have a program that gathers up headlines from the news and then dumps them into an Excel spreadsheet where they're randomized. And then it pulls them up two by two. And I try and see if I can make any inferences between the two. And it might be like, Netflix subscribers in Tampa and the weather in Oregon, which has nothing to do with each other. But occasionally, more times than not, your brain will connect dots that you really didn't see coming. I also do this when I do public speaking. I will have one slide and I'll follow it immediately by a completely unassociated slide, trying to get people to draw inferences. So what I'm going to do is I'm throwing the title of my presentation today. Let me do the share screen. The title of my presentation is I got 99 problems and inflation isn't one, which is why I was wearing the cap at the very top. And let's see here. Let me make sure I can share my screen. Okay, that should have done it.
There we go. We got it.
All right. So I'm going to start throwing data points at y'all. And what I'm wanting to do is by the end of about 20 or 25 minutes, I'm going to tell you the conclusions I've drawn from these points, and they're sort of related yet unrelated, and none of them involve inflation. I've talked to y'all so much about inflation lately. I'm skipping inflation today, but let's go ahead and start and then see where it connects your mind by the time I'm done. All right, the first one is yesterday. I just stuck this in a few minutes ago, but yesterday in California, they determined that bees are fish. So, and they said, while fish is commonly understood to be a maritime species, yes, that's usually how it's commonly understood to be. Anyway, I got 99 problems in inflation. Here's one of them. Massive fire breaks out at poultry farm that supplies eggs to major supermarkets. I'm not sure if y'all are aware, but there are a lot of these fires that have been going on in food manufacturers lately. Russia and China are continuing to use the dollar to dominate trade, or they're going to replace the dollar. We are moving, I believe, towards a multipolar world, and I do not think that the dollar is going to be the default currency anymore. Palisades power plant in Michigan is closing, so they're closing down nuclear right at probably a pretty bad time. Toyota reported that its sales were down a lot. And they've slashed all their estimates. Now the UK and the EU are hitting Russia's oil cargoes. They're trying to sanction them through the use of insurance, which is a kind of novel way to do it. And what may be happening also to Europe is they may be sanctioning themselves right out of business. I read a Goldman Sachs report yesterday that said it's possible that 60%, if this keeps going on, 60% of all small businesses in Germany could shut down in the fall and the winter. The Swedish parliament decided to ban the extraction of coal, oil, and natural gas right during an energy crisis. I believe that everything's all about energy. Energy is life. I've talked to y'all before about, calories are energy, and we literally have to have calories, but we're in sort of a energy denial phase right now. We've still got folks flocking to Florida, and I think the next place they're going to come to Florida from is from the West, and I'll explain that why in a little bit. I'm a big fan of small nuclear reactors, but now they've kind of started trash talking them, saying they produce too much waste. Some environmental studies have come out. I believe that small nuclear reactors are one of the keys to our energy self-sufficiency in the future. India has decided to go ahead and go full bore on coal mining again because there's so much demand over there. It's interesting. Keep an eye on India because India is aligning themselves more and more with China and Russia, which is really curious, seeing as how about a year ago they were literally in a shooting war in the Himalayas with China, but they're getting more aligned with them. And this is part of the multipolar world I believe we're going to. The White House Supply Chain Advisor is a World Economic Forum. Those people are trouble. Climate change activists who work think tank. I sort of have this theory right now that we're being governed by people who aren't quite serious. That worries me. There are going to be fuel shortages this summer due to a squeezed oil market. My daughter just got back from Italy. She was fixing to head off next month to Britain, but they canceled the trip because the British tour company told them they couldn't be sure that they were going to have enough energy. They weren't going to have the diesel to drive the buses around. Copper miners are still on strike. I believe this is Mexico. That's not a good thing. We need copper a lot. Hopefully y'all are starting to view a theme now and make some analogies. An advisor to Zelensky said that this is the state of diplomacy these days, that they would throw an exemplary tantrum if they didn't get rocket systems. So it's like, give us rockets or we're going to throw a tantrum, which is part of my whole, we're not being governed by adults these days. I was in Costco yesterday, and for the first time, I saw people buying in bulk, like rice in bulk and tuna in bulk, things like that. It's one of the first times, and I go to Costco a lot, one of the first times I've seen that. If you're in the stock market right now, you understand that there's basically zero institutional liquidity. Everyone in the stock market right now is retail, and that might not be the best thing in the world. We're having the most significant energy crisis since the 1970s, and we're having it at exactly the worst possible time we could possibly have it, given that we're having supply chain problems and we need energy to produce food. I think everything ultimately comes down to the fact that I believe we may have a food problem this summer. In Stephen King's The Stand, this is sort of a personal commentary. People dying of the flu tried to kill the people that were immune to the flu. And if you look at news out of Australia today, there's a lot of conflict going on between people that were vaccinated and people that weren't vaccinated. They have sort of a little mini civil war brewing down there. China has de facto control of a lot of Mexican ports and a lot of Bahamian ports, giving them sort of, and they control the Panama Canal, giving them a big say in our supply chain. The yuan ruble trading has surged, and this is part of the fact that the world is de-dollarizing, and we're going to, and like I said, it's going to be multipolar, and there's going to be a currency that is mixed between the ruble and the yuan, and then there'll be the dollar, and it'll be essentially the United States and Europe using the dollar, and India and 6 billion other people using whatever else is there. We keep sending boats out into to sort of say that we'll support Taiwan if we have to, but China has enough missiles to wipe out pretty much anything we send out there. There's a crisis going on. You've seen Shanghai be shut down for the last 2 months, and what it is, interestingly enough, I believe, is part of it is Xi Jinping pulling a power play before the elections coming up in October, in which he's going to try and be emperor for life. We sort of heard they were failing at first, but now we know that Russia's army is basically still a killing machine, and we'll see how that works out. If natural gas inventories decline substantially, Putin will be able to bust up EU unity. Putin de facto has Europe's future in his hands right now, because between 40 and 50% of their energy comes from him. And you may or not have read how quickly he demanded to be paid in rubles. Not everybody's doing it, but it's interesting how many people have given in and are paying him in rubles. This is just another personal thing I read, but I thought it was kind of cool, so I'd throw it in there that Darwin's actually more influential in the world, on Europe especially, than he opened the floodgates for Marx. And I really worry about Europe. I worry a bit about the United States. I very much worry about Europe. I think they're about to be excluded from the world economy to a large extent, because if the energy crisis continues, they're not going to be able to produce things. Mexico has the #1 amount of digital nomads. Mexico, I've sort of been thinking for a while that people were going to be leaving here and going over to Mexico, and it may be that started. Once again, I hope y'all are all putting associations in your head and building a theme at all these points I'm throwing at you. There's a Korean pop group called BTS, and they appeared at the White House press briefing. I think it was day before yesterday. This is part of my theme about the people who govern us maybe aren't serious people. Right now, China has total dominance of essentially the amino acid chain. China has stockpiled 65% of the world's corn and 50% of the world's wheat right now. So they've got most of the world's food right now, which I find interesting. The big theme, which is running through what I'm talking to you about, is food. China is also buying land over here, and we don't seem to be worried about the fact that they're buying they're putting up a 370 acre facility right next to one of our air bases in North Dakota. Everybody just seems fine with that. China's population likes lots of protein, and there's sort of a silent war going on for protein. You know, they bought one of our big pork producers over here, and like I said, they're stockpiling a huge amount of the corn and wheat in the world, because the world turns on four resources: protein, water, energy, and firepower. And right now, China and Russia are autarkic in those ways. There's the word autarky means you're self-sufficient, and those are really the two most autarkic countries in the world right now, China and Russia, which I believe are going to form the basis of a new multipolar economic system. Western sanctions are essentially having the unintended effect of causing famine in Africa, which is going to have the unintended effect of causing more mass migration. Macron has warned the French that they may be taking in 60 million more migrants. Mexican cartels are now in control of the fishing and logging industry.
Hey, Ron.
Not a good thing. Yo.
Ron.
Hey, Chris, I'm trying to blast through these. Let me blast through these, and then I'll answer questions. Yeah.
Just a quick comment. I mean, it's not Western sanctions. It's Russia invading Ukraine that's creating this starvation in Africa. But
well, which creates the energy crisis. But yeah, let me blast through these because I got a few more to go. I don't have 99 problems today, but I think I have like 54, and we're on number 30. Look for some kind of I would not be too surprised to see some kind of cyber war take place right before China does decide to go into Taiwan, which I think they're going to do. Here's what I was telling y'all before about them buying corn and soybeans a bunch, and we're aware they're doing it, but we seem not to care. They are on a bit of a war footing because of Xi Jinping and the election coming up in October. I think it's October. And once again, on my not serious theme, China is preparing for war, and honestly, we're trying to figure out the breakfast buffet at the Shanghai Four Seasons. That was a real headline. The other day, yesterday or the day before, there was an undersea cable disruption between Frankfurt and Helsinki, which is kind of curious timing if you think about it. I'm sure y'all can figure that one out. Soil temperatures in the Midwest are cooler, and it's wetter out there. And so we're way behind planting corn and wheat. All right. Once again, returning to my theme about food. It's hurricane season, and a direct hit right now to Texas and Louisiana would have a really, really bad impact on fuel prices, because that's where most of the refineries are, and the pipeline coming over to the east. That could be a bad thing. North Dakota, this once again is about that base that they're building out near our base, and the fact that they are the Dakota National Guard is using CCP controlled TikTok to recruit. China just keeps making more inroads. So far this year, I talked to y'all about this last time, the ruble is the strongest currency on the planet, which is odd. In China, because of, I don't know if y'all been following that shutdown, but it's one of the saddest things I've ever seen. Elderly are separated from caregivers, and kids are being, pets are being, people come into people's houses and kill their pets. I mean, it's just horrible what's going on. There's a lot of things going on in the world. And what I fear, this is my biggest fear and sort of a theme behind this. What I fear is complacency. And there are all these horrible things going on that I've been showing you, and I'm not through yet, but there's too much normalcy bias. I mean, people, normalcy bias is when people are like, yeah, it's normal, everything will be fine. Whereas I think where we're more at, Mike Tyson has a famous saying, is that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I'm just worried we're getting punched in the face and we're not even paying attention. 18 months ago, Zoom had a bigger market cap than ExxonMobil. Now ExxonMobil is 10 times larger than Zoom. China's been running military drills. I've sort of been suspecting and talking to people about this on its northeastern border. I think China is already claiming they're an Arctic country, and they're not. but I think at some point they and Russia are being friends now, but at some point they're going to want some path straight up to the Arctic because, as y'all may know, global warming has opened up a lot of shipping in the Arctic, and China wants to be up there. In Los Angeles, basically people walked into a Sephora and just filled trash bags in front of people. And people just kind of don't react and think it's normal now. We had last week, there was a food riot in Jacksonville, Florida, and someone got killed during that food riot and nobody paid attention to it. Like I said, I fear complacency in all this. Overnight swap rates in Europe are saying that their rates are going to go much, much higher. I have a friend in Germany who tells me that everyone she knows is selling their property there and looking for someone else to go. For the first time, the Swiss mining conference, nobody used to go to it except for really wonky people. And they might have like 100 people there. This year, they had their biggest attendance ever. So I'm not sure what that's telling us, but I'm pretty sure it's telling us something. In the Financial Times yesterday, they asked the question, can Africa grow without fossil fuels? It's interesting that they're asking that question is the reason I put that up there. Potash, we better not have a shortage of potash because we then won't be able to grow food, which will be a problem. And I've been talking about food. Our UN ambassador to the Ukraine didn't know that Ukraine grew a lot of food, which is awesome. I know y'all have all read about this, the baby formula shortage. Scott and I were discussing how in the world in our country can you have a baby formula shortage? It just seems unthinkable. And then this is my last slide. Chris can probably tell me immediately what's wrong with this. This is the Secretary of Defense and the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff meeting to discuss Ukraine. Chris, can you pick it out? What's the problem with that picture? Okay, I'll go ahead and tell you. All the Ukrainian flags in the background are upside down, which is kind of goes along with my theme about us not being governed by serious people. I hope I spurred some debate. I feel as though I probably did, but this is how I like to think. I like to assimilate lots of facts, try and make connections from them, and then act. And what I worry about, these are things that I truly believe are going to affect you and your families and your financial future. And I guess my big themes before I kind of turn it over to the group is that we're basically being governed by people who aren't serious. I believe there's going to be food riots, at least in Europe, maybe here. I think Europe is actually going to be doomed for about a generation. And the United States is losing its status as a hegemon. And we're in a multipolar world now. And really almost every slide I showed y'all related either food or money to the fact, or energy, to the fact that we're in a multipolar world now. And we need to pay attention to that when we're trying to decide where to invest all our funds. Scott, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Yeah, I wanted to get to a place here too where it's not just the doom and gloom section of it, right? Because
Dr. Doom, I'm sorry, but you know how I do.
Yeah, I know, and it's great, right? To get into the what all the things that could go wrong type of analysis, or all the things that you'd say like here's all the negative points that would draw to like a conclusion, right? So the one thing here too, Ron, is that like as we're all having discussions and there's things that are going on here and discussion here in the chat too, is that there's a fundamental question that underlies all of these types of analysis, right? Which is like, what is your source of truth? Like, what do you believe are true facts, right? That you would actually look to make investment decisions off of. And then how do you coalesce those facts to draw a theme that are then going to tell you like what to do, right? So there's a place in here too, Ron, where like as part of the discussions that Ron's had like weeks over weeks, and he'll continue to have in the future, which is not just doom and gloom of like here's the current economic trends, but also what's smart money doing right now as they come into that.